Everybody knows Victor is my right-hand guy, my best friend. We've been working together since 2006. Geo, we've been working with him for a couple of years. He films all our live events like this. Usually we broadcast, but we're not broadcasting this. Xmel is John Rutherford, and he's in the UK, like Taff, and
Hello there.
yeah, he's
So,
our world in world thespian, but he's also um, just a general all around good guy, and he's our community leader and the CEO for our new company that we're starting, that we
okay.
started, I should say. And then there's Greg, who is Francisco in world, and he's uh, our in-world coder. He's coded quite a few games for us, and we're working to update his texture board, and I'm cramming it full of my textures. Then we have Agile Bill, which is
Hey,
Bill
Bill.
Krebs, and
Hello,
he's
hello.
he's just a really super supporter of anything virtual worlds, and he's visited a lot of them. That's why I thought it was really key to have him here today because he's worked in quite a few, including Unity, which I know Joe you've done some work in as well. And then there's Charles. Are you still working with the University of Australia, Charles?
I am, yes. We're still working on the South Africa project and a 3D VLE for the University of Australia.
He's been working on a project with Australia for to bring teaching mechanisms and systems into Africa, which is pretty cool. So, but we are going to do a Kickstarter to start on a very particular project for a community that is much less demanding than your typical recreational virtual world user. But we see Spot on 3D as integral to feed into that next platform. That platform will be any device operational based on HTML5, WebGL, Java, um, OpenGL, a little bit of everything thrown into the mix, and we're really confident we can make it so it can be compatible with our backups like OR files and such from OpenSim. We also had a gentleman on our grid who helped us make a sculpt to mesh tool and prim to mesh tool for conversions. So we will have a channel for conversions. Um, so we really are looking past OpenSim at this point because we've really kind of come to a point where we don't think we can go much further on it, and we really need to be on every kind of device that's operational to be considered relevant.
Okay.
So for us, OpenSim is kind of, I don't want to say it's not relevant anymore. I think it still is relevant, but it's got to move on beyond this.
Yeah.
And we could see this as still a development area. I still think we'll have people here doing certain things that make sense to be done in OpenSim, but then porting it over to the next platform for massive viewing is how I
Okay.
see it.
Yeah, it's a good idea because there's a million people doing OpenSim.
Yeah.
Yeah, and OpenSim in some ways I think is actually limiting us as far as getting to the 3D web because we're locked into a solution that's based on a hack. And we really need to get beyond that if we want to see this get general acceptance worldwide.
Well, the reason we came with Joe is because he's writing. Well, you want to tell
I
Joe
just
that
dropped it.
you
I
do
just
better.
dropped it in text to you guys in
Okay.
Skype if everybody's in Skype. But basically, in a nutshell, I'm doing an undergrad course right now called Engineering Virtual Worlds. I'm working as a subject matter expert for Rasmussen College. In fact, I'm in the last 2 weeks of the development process right now. I've got some really great folks that have been helping with this. We've been talking with Richard Bartle, who designed the first virtual world called Mud, multi-user dungeon. I got some advice and some materials to use from Disney Imagineer, Jesse Shell. I've been talking with some other OpenSim developers as well, looking at different approaches. Did an interview with Intel Labs on the DSG as well, distributed scene graph. I'm going to be talking with Chris Collins this week coming up
Oh, from
about virtual
Tipadia.
economy. So there's going to be a lot of cool stuff in this, and I think it's kind of an introduction, but it really looks at a lot of in-depth things. We look at player types, we look at challenges with the virtual environments. In fact, that's what we're going to talk about today is some of the challenges. we're looking at the technology hurdles. And I looked at three particular ones. I looked at Spot on 3D, looked at, I'm trying to think of what Elon. I did an interview with him the other
Kitely.
day.
Kitely.
That's yeah, Kitely. And then I talked with the guys from Intel with Dan Lake about the DSG testing that they've been doing for the 1,000 avatars per sim. Looking at three different ways that we've approached this, and what some of the pluses and minuses are, and basically trying to. These students will have a bit of an engineering background, so we're trying to, and game development. So we're trying to bring across some things. But one thing I do want to try to keep this focused on how we're overcoming technology hurdles, and then maybe a little bit of your vision for the future. All right, so without any further ado, let me go ahead and get started, if that's okay.
Yeah.
First off, how are virtual worlds and gaming technologies being used for serious purposes beyond just entertainment? Like, for example, with Spot on 3D, can you give me some examples of some innovative ways that you're using these virtual environments beyond just entertainment?
Well, we've got we got a K through 12 school setting up lesson plans there. We have Rockcliffe finally coming in to set up scenarios so we can have a go-to company for people to go to when we bring businesses in. So we're not trying to do everything. Bill's done some meetings and stuff. He can probably teach more about that, talk to you more on that subject. And of course, we're always trying to bring more functionality as a platform developer so that people can do things like hot swap scenes, which it's different than an aura file because aura file is like a snapshot. This, when you purchase a hot swap scene, it automatically changes everything to a group and includes you in that group without you having to sign up for it or know its name or search for it or anything. It's all automated. And if you add or take something out of it, it will remember it on the fly. And that's pretty big. It sounds like a little thing, but it's really huge when you start
Well, you
talking
basically,
about
from what I understand, you've basically taken the holodeck concept that we learned from the days of Star Trek and made it app easy.
Exactly. And we feel this is absolutely mandatory because we need builders to build these lesson plans and scenarios for people, for business and education to jump off from and make it affordable. And I think this year is the year we'll start advertising on Amazon. And like I said, I still think Spot on 3D is going to be a very viable grid, but I think we'll be porting people over to the new platform as it becomes available.
Okay, Agile Bill, can you talk to me a little bit about some of the innovative approaches you've used, and have you used this all too, by the way, for collaborative engineering projects, or are there ways that this lends itself better for agile approaches?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a necessity, but people change more slowly than technology. So when I teach, 70% of my students are in India. Our teams are spread all across the globe, from the Pacific time zone, Europe, you name it. So there's no question that our teams are distributed today. Doing any job, including project management, agile software development, and agile project management, well, really, heck, any kind of time you get two workers together, it really helps to have tools not just to do voice, but to give a visual dimension to what we're doing. No, and you had a good comment about interactivity. So you can build, you can model in real time in these environments like Spot on 3D. So I've looked at many tools, but when you want to prototype, you want to build, you want to collaborate for project management or any kind of project, these environments are brilliant. It's a bit of a learning curve. The technology constantly evolves, but I tell you, this is reality, I think, of the future.
Okay, thanks, Agile. Tessa, if you can tell me a little bit about Spot on 3D and how your company has been overcoming the technology hurdles in the past. I mean, we know that OpenSim has its challenges, and we're trying to develop it further. A number of companies are. Tell me a little bit about Spot on 3D and how you overcome those technology hurdles.
Well, we have really had to kind of tear it apart. We tried several ways of setting OpenSim up per the recommendations of the court coders, and it just simply did not work. It wasn't stable. It could not handle more than 4 or 5 simulations or sims per server, and that just was not acceptable. I knew we needed to be able to handle 25 to 50 sims, and actually we've exceeded that. We've at one point had over 200 sims on one server. Now, granted, our servers are monster machines, they like got 64 gigs of RAM, and big hard drives and all that. But still, that's pretty unheard of. And these aren't bare naked sims; these are really built up sims. So that was the big thing: was how to get as many sims as you possibly can on a server and them run without failing, even though somebody's scripting and building. That was the big mountain to climb. And we did that, and after that, it was basically trying to streamline teleporting the client so it was more accessible, and that has really been our hallmark. I got to thank Frank Ye for that, because he's an IBMer and he came in and really kind of held our hand for the first couple 6 months we were in working, and he said, "You know what your specialty is in bringing it some simplicity to it, so it doesn't have this huge learning curve for a new user. That's where you need to focus, not on just build it and wait for them to come." So that's what we've been doing, is developing all these infrastructures for the new user with that in mind.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot that's left to be desired with the OpenSim traditional UI.
Yes.
It's just not really designed with the end user in mind. And that makes it difficult for people when they're trying to come in world to get started quickly.
And that's where we think modular pieces, when we go to this next platform, I want it to be sort of like Spore, where you have a ton of different pre-made shapes, so you don't have to make an arch out of 3 prims anymore. Or, it's just insane that we have to rebuild basic shapes over and over again. I think primitives should not be just the little primitives we have available to us right now, but they should be a whole smorgasbord of pieces that you can mix and match and then work together.
Interesting. Almost like intelligent prims.
Exactly. And that's where we're going with the next platform. And we're doing a lot of modular work right now to make that happen. Okay.
Very, very, very interesting. Tell me a little bit about what you've done, though, in particular with the Spot on 3D Viewer. I mean, you have, I think, some kind of a web interface inside of it. Plus,
we've done
it actually goes on to a web page. Can you talk about those 2 parts in particular?
Yeah, the biggest changes we made, we did a lot of nip and tucks on it to make it work functional, but the biggest thing, and I actually had to fight with this with my programmers, Vic had to dummy it up for me to kind of fake it working on a panel in World, and it's the web window, as we call it. It's a slide out web window, and it's really made it so we don't have a huge demand for media on a prim, because you can look at Google Docs, you can look at videos, you can chat through it, you can do anything you can do through a regular web page through this web window. And that was no small feat to get done. But we really didn't want to go media on a prim yet, because we just feel it's not secure enough. It's a huge gaping hole for hacking, and eventually somebody will walk around with a virus on a prim, and anybody who has their media open will get it. We don't feel that's a real professional, production grade way of doing media on a prim, and until we can find out a better way, we feel like the web window really gives more of that security that's necessary, because we always try to match up to Web 2.0 standards and 3.0. Then the other thing is the web plugin, and that is we're the first persons who have bubble wrapped the client in a way that it can run off a web page, and we have a Facebook plugin and it can specifically bring them into specific areas. Like we have, if you click the Spot on 3D one, you'll land at the Spot on 3D hub. If you open up and use the Facebook VSIM plugin, it will send you into the VSIM landing point. So we have pinpoint direction. We have segregated communities, but they're still not closed off from each other, but they are definitely separated visually on the map and have different entry points. Then we have our web plugin, that runs on a regular web page, not just through Facebook. It's very similar, and these are all the same client. They're just wrapped in a different tool to distribute. And So we have the regular plugin that will allow you can actually make your own wizard plugin for your own web page. It's just a web page you go through, and after you're done, you can stick the widget on your home page, and just like YouTube, it'll run right from there, and anybody who comes in will be sent directly to where you want them to land. You bypass all our hubs, and they go directly to your sim. Usually, we don't want you landing on somebody else's land, obviously.
Oh, so
But
you have to be the sim owner, or
you
what's the
don't have
restriction on
to.
that?
There's not rules. They can if they find a sim they really love and want people to land there, they can. They just have to keep in mind that there's going to be no one to assist that person when they come in. So we really
Okay.
want strongly urge them. We give them tools that will it's like boards that allow them to TP to places so they can find the help they need, because we understand the biggest faux pas of that is no direct interaction with another human being, and that is absolutely mandatory. That's something we've been really keen on. We're not always successful at having someone live on the hubs at all times, but we have the ability, we have sensors so we can tell when
Understand.
somebody's landed and we can respond to them quickly.
Well, a lot of times with these technologies, it's the asynchronous with the synchronous at the same time that really makes for the impact. Because you want the ability to come to the environments that they're persistent and you can come into them at any time, but you also want to be able to interact with live human beings,
Exactly.
you know, and that's where the synchronous technology really makes a big difference as well, at least having humans there, you know. AI sometimes can substitute for that, but it's still not quite at the same level as humans at this point.
We've actually made a very conscious decision not to use AI to kind of fake it. But I still think it has a value, and I still think at some point we'll use them as fillers during non-peak hours. We definitely want to recommend it to our clients. We developed an AI called Evo Agent way back, and we're still developing it. And this Evo Agent is designed to run like 10 on a computer of a monitor. A monitor can view all the avatars from it, and it can respond when the avatar gets stumped on a question. And that way you have the ability to have more presence without having more costs, which I think is
Okay.
really going to be pertinent to business and education.
I understand. And tell me a little bit about that, what your focus is for Spot on 3D. Are you more business focused, or how are you different from some of the other grids?
Well, we are more business and education, I think, but we also understand the recreational user market is a rich market that is really our bread and butter. They pay most of our bills, and they also are an excellent testing community. They are so patient, they are so long suffering, and if we take the time to listen to them and screen share with them and see where we're missing the boat, they educate us so much on how to do the user interface so much better. So it's priceless what they bring to us, and that's why we really don't see an abandonment of Spot on 3D as an open sim platform. I think it will still be a place for many years that will cultivate new things and test them there and refine them there and then port them over to the new platform.
Okay. Well, looking back at your experience with many different virtual worlds, you had mentioned that you had been in the early days of active worlds, for example.
Mhm.
Can you tell me a little bit about how you think changes in things like bandwidth, larger user bases, and the new feature sets that came to the virtual worlds have evolved these technologies over the years?
Yeah, when I started in Active Worlds, it actually started in Alpha World, which was a predecessor to Active Worlds. Active Worlds kind of spinned off from it, and they even had interoperability where you could go from Active Worlds to Alpha and back and forth. So it was like the first thing of, like we were trying to do with Second Life and OpenSim, that it's actually been done. It was developed on an engine called Criterion Renderware, and it was actually given out with a book for free. Which is just unheard of. It was just a phenomenal environment, and I worked in it for 5 years. It was really great. But it was very limited. So when I came to it, was you think the learning curve is hard at Second Life and OpenSim? You just seen it in Active Worlds. You actually had to know how to program and read, particularly program language, even just to model. It was really difficult. So not the thing for the average
Not
Joe, for sure.
not rapid prototyping like we
No.
have in today's technologies.
But
Yeah.
we did have Wells Fargo. Wells Fargo has been extraordinarily cutting edge. They have been in every virtual world right from the start. It's unbelievable how dedicated they are. Even though they keep getting burned, they come right back and try it again when a new one opens up. And I
That's
really
interesting.
hope when we get our platform, we can entice them to come back into virtual, because they have a real vision for banking online using virtual spaces that they just haven't been able to achieve in the platforms that are available to them right now.
Well, how has Wells Fargo evolved? I mean, since they've really been involved with it over the years, how have you seen them evolve in their use of the technology as it went from, the early days with Alpha Worlds and Active Worlds to Second Life and OpenSim now?
Well, I just think it's more about the customer service. I think we're getting back to the idea of that we do have to provide that we can't call it in, which we've been doing for probably the last 15 years. The companies that are starting, like Foster Bank, has started, back to the basics of really giving good customer service, and they're becoming a real contender because of that. So I think we're getting back to the ABCs of business, which is you cannot forget your customer. It is about establishing a relationship and not a faux one. Oh, let me send them an IM or an email here and say we're done. No, it's really about sitting down and talking to them and having a relationship with them by building some real connective steps together and building something together from the company to the person. And I think this is, I think in a way, the disconnect, the internet has hurt that connection with business and its people, because we see businesses right now and for the last 10 or 15 years doing things that we never would have thought a business would have done, very callous and unfeeling. And no sense of responsibility to community. And I think the internet has helped foster that because there's this faux connection. But they really don't have to sit down and talk to a human being. They don't have to talk to me, that I'm supposed to email it in or leave a voice message. But I think that the businesses of tomorrow, if they use these environments to bring that human element back, I think they will be the monster companies of the next generation, because we all are tired of the voicemail, the voice systems, the emails. We want a live human being. They actually have now response. If I say live human being when I'm frustrated on a phone call to a company, surprisingly or not, all get sent to a live human being. So
And how do you think the avatar affects that?
well, the avatar is really unique, and I've always said that the SL avatars are extremely unique because they have a very realistic presence, and I think it's because the eye tracking more than anything else. It has an extraordinarily intuitive eye tracking system, so that if somebody walks up behind you, your avatar will move its head towards the sound. And that is really extraordinary. And it was breakthrough avatar technology. And I really feel that's why we feel so connected to our avatar that we end up investing a great deal of money and time, either making it look like ourselves or our ideal selves, because we always shed a few pounds and wrinkles, I think, when we get older. And it
Or turn
becomes,
blue?
yes. And I think it becomes our fountain of youth, quite honestly. We are forever young there. And then we are viewed by what's inside of us instead of our shell. I've always said that the truth becomes the lie becomes the truth with the avatar, because people can only judge you when everybody's beautiful. How do people judge you? They can only judge you by what you say and what you do. And that's really how we really want to be judged. We want to be judged by our insides, not our outsides. And I think if we really get people beyond the E factor of avatars and get them to buy into the wow factor of them, that they will get to that thing of, yes, everybody's beautiful. And yes, I know probably they don't look this good, but it's okay because I get a sense of who they are as a person. And that's more important.
Can you tell me a little bit
Well
about
said.
that, though, as far as the when we were talking, as far as the changes in the technology and how how you've seen that change things?
Well, we went from, in some ways it hasn't achieved, because I can tell you in active worlds, the physics was a lot better. We had elevators that performed flawlessly. And I mean, you click a button and the floor and you go up. No bopping up and down. Perfectly physics, roller coasters. Oh my God. It was just flawless. And why OpenSim has not been able to achieve that, I don't know. But we've definitely failed on that in OpenSim and Second Life. Second Life has Havoc's engine. They still can't achieve a car that can go over the land well enough. So I scratched my head over that one. So that we definitely failed at, and we need to succeed because there's tons of education we can do that involve gravity and physics, and we're just not tapping into that. There's bunches of, I think, evolutionary science that we have to go to space out to get really
Yeah.
do right now that we could do right here at home if we had real physics really working in virtual.
Well,
Uh,
I think on that part of it is the technology taking to develop. I mean that we're
mhm.
still in the early days, but the other thing too is I think it's a matter of supply and demand.
Yes, it is.
If there's a big enough demand signal, it's going to be supplied.
Well,
You
there
know,
is a
if
huge demand for physics in OpenSim. It's just
there is a huge demand signal for physics and virtual worlds in general. For it to get to the level that you're talking about, I think that there isn't enough of a commercial. It would bring profit, it would bring a lot of additional use, but there aren't people beating down the doors yet saying that's what we need for it to happen. People that have money in hand to
right.
make that kind of a change.
I would think the
So
military would be really gung ho on it.
they're interested, but I think what from my talks with the Army, it just sounds like they're interested in it, but they're still trying to figure out how they're going to use it. So, like for example, with Project Moses, seeing how the technology can be used. They're working with a lot of different gaming technologies and virtual environments. So, how would OpenSim fit into the picture? It's not going to be the end all do all. So, what areas is it going to be best for? And that's really the thing I think that a lot of times with these technologies is a limiting factor is us understanding their application to start with, because until we understand how we're going to use them, it's kind of hard to see what we need to fix and what things get fixed first, second, and third.
Well, I know we did have an interesting project come across our table early on. We weren't quite ready for it, unfortunately, but we did do, I think, a decent demo, and that was for homestead security, on the borderland security, because they said the dilemma was they can put plenty of hot, warm bodies on the fence line, but that because the people know they live there locally, they can threaten them and their families, and it's usually unsuccessful because they're afraid they're going to die. And that the solution was to have remote viewing of the borderlines. But you have to be able to tell when they're tunneling. You have to be able to tell the difference between a rabbit and a person. So they're talking about using infrared technology, and they were wanting our virtual environments to feed back on terrain changes and
Yeah.
kind of follow and track people as they went across the terrain and what they were doing on that terrain. So, and I'm sure it's for Homeland Security as well.
Yeah. And some of the stuff we're limited by the technology as far as how far down we can go. Like I believe SL and OpenSim, you can only go down to 0 meters on your depth.
Mm-hmm.
So we can't accurately simulate the way it is in real life. We also don't have the curvature of the Earth, so
Yeah.
that limits us as far as being able to do things like theater ballistic missile defense.
Yeah.
Because we need those kind of accurate models, and you can't do that with a flat Earth.
Yeah, that's
You need
very
a
true.
round globe. Yeah. So
But I see the baby steps in being, quite honestly, in education with lesson plans. I mean, I've been banging this drum for developers. We need educators to work with. If we could get a bunch of educators who were very serious about creating 3D lesson plans, I think we could hop on to the bandwagon of the online lessons that Bill Gates sponsors. One, it begins with a K. I forget the name of it, but it's all online, all videos, all free.
yeah, that was the
And
one with the guy that started by doing some math classes, I
with
think it
his
was,
kids, yeah, with his
calculus
nephews.
for his nephews. Yeah.
Yes, that's
And
it.
they actually found the virtual him better than the real life him. Yeah.
Exactly. And I could see us jumping off that and actually creating lesson plans that they can walk through and work through. Like yes, Khan Academy. Thank you, Bill.
Nothing.
Just phenomenal place.
Yeah.
And what I would like to see is work with educators to flesh these out into 3D lesson plans, put them on a hot swap, and make them accessible at very reasonable prices. We're talking $25 to $50 a lesson plan, and they can use them over and over again. And that way they have something already pre-done that is scientifically correct and educationally correct, because I'm not an educator. I'm not going to do it the way a teacher would want it to be done. And that's the hardest part. And the teachers tend to want to try their hand at it themselves, but I'm going to be real honest. Teachers usually, not all, but usually don't build too well. And they get kind of stuck in the mechanics of it. And we need to free them from that. We need to take and do this hand in hand and do this together. And that way I think we'll get a really polished professional product that nobody will put their nose up at and take it more seriously, quite honestly.
Okay, and the final question I had, and we can work this one around the room if there's certain people you'd like to bring out, or if you have anything to add to it as well, is I'd like to know what are the thoughts of this group are when it comes to where do you think virtual worlds are heading in the future?
You guys do this now because I've been a big pig.
They got to be mobile, right? Everything's got to be mobile.
Yep. Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I agree. They have to be mobile, and they have to get easier to use. They have to become more intuitive and more integrated with real life. Once you get that real life virtual world integration, I think that'll strengthen the usage of virtual worlds.
Okay. So is that almost augmented reality you're talking there?
Yeah,
I think that's
very similar. Augmented reality, things like motion tracking systems, like the Kinect, so that for instance, a professor could stand in front of a class, teach his class. His movements would be mimicked by his avatar for the distance learners. His content that's on screen would be, presented on screen for the distance learners. Again, I'm thinking in an educational context. This is where I work, is in developing 3D virtual worlds for educational use, primarily right now primary school, 4th and 5th grade students. And we're using small self-contained virtual worlds because I'm working in South Africa where bandwidth is non-existent. If they have an iBurst connection, which is about 1 megabit per second, they're doing really good. And it would be impossible to support, 20 avatars on that single connection.
Yeah.
So we're using small, self-enclosed virtual worlds where we bring it into the computer lab. But I can definitely see this expanding out and becoming an education network where one math teacher in one school can teach students in all of the schools by virtue of the virtual world.
The universal education. That's what I've been preaching for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we have to develop some more infrastructure. Go ahead.
We also have changes too in what is education and how education is viewed, both in the view of the universities and colleges, the students' eyes, and even the employers' eyes. I mean, we have things like Stanford University offering not just free courses, but free courses with college credit that lead to free degree programs. So how does that change things, and how can these technologies be applied for such things,
Yeah, I agree. One issue that we're running into with the virtual world when we're building for the schools, one thing we're finding, I should say, is that the typical didactic learning model doesn't really work or doesn't work very well, which means, I write it down on the board, you write it down in your notebook, you remember that. It's memory, rote recall. What we're finding really works is experience-based learning.
Mm-hmm.
If you want kids to learn math, put them in a virtual world, put them in a situation where they need math skills to succeed. They will pick those skills up. They will remember them more and clearer than they do by just simply learning by, reading it off of a blackboard, writing it down in their book, and trying to memorize facts.
I have a perfect example of that. I nanny 2 days a week, and the 7-year-old boy, carrot top, cute as a button little boy, he was having a real hard time with math he couldn't get it how you could, 9 apples and you take away 5, what does that leave you with? So I brought him in world and we set out cones, and he could do 5 at a time. So he did 5 and then added 4. He got to 9, then he minus 3. He could see me pulling the prims away and recounted, and a light bulb went off in his head because he was actually working with these prims and he was doing the movements and the mechanic of figuring it out, sort of like an abacus, but in a much more fluid, interactive way. And he loved it, and he's just skyrocketed since then. It was like a major breakthrough with him. And if that's just one little tiny example of how we can use a very simplistic way to get the kids to understand this, for them, extremely complicated stuff.
Can I give another example?
Yeah.
Based on my experience about, I'm a thespian. I'm into theatre. I mean, one example I've got is that the sort of thing we can do in a virtual world is we can look at the world of Shakespeare, London in 1590. We can build a replica of a Shakespearean theatre or an inn or a tavern or a street. All these things we can get the kids to populate that and experience what it was like to be there. And then we can make a theatrical production come alive by getting them to actually do the production themselves. We can have people who might be half a world away, who are themselves Shakespearean actors, coming in and talking about the show, demonstrating, and then letting the kids have a go. It can be turned into an amazing multi-sensory, day in the life, whatever you want to do. And all this can be done for peanuts in terms of cost. The sort of thing that would if you were to try to do it with by flying in real actors and building real replicas, it would cost you thousands of dollars.
Oh, millions.
We can do it. We can do it for peanuts, and we can do that sort of experience for half the world's children. Mm-hmm. And bring things. The Shakespeare's example that I have personally, but you can probably think of a dozen others. So there's everything, isn't there? There's maths, there's physics, there's history, there's culture, there's language, there's
and the ability.
Well, it's one thing to read about Hamlet. It's another thing to walk in Hamlet's shoes.
Exactly.
That's absolutely right. Can I quote you on that?
Yeah.
Sure.
That's brilliant.
I mean, imagine how moving it would be to. You don't want to get too graphic, but to live through the Holocaust as an observer, Well,
have you seen the one? Have you seen the one in Second Life with World War I?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, what they do is they find a way that communicates the message without horrifying you. You get the message. You understand, how horrible war was, but you can do it in a way that doesn't, tear away your soul at the same point.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's important with kids. You want to still have a sense of hope for them, but
you have to understand your audience. Yeah.
Yes, but my goal is I want this really customized education. I want to be able to go to a philosophy class in Berkeley and actually pick that professor that I want to learn that philosophy class from, not just be one number in a crowd. I want a customized degree. And I want to be able to go to Yale for a legal course, and I want to go to Full Sail for a graphics course because they're the top grade schools. And nobody would ever doubt or have any conflict in saying that's a degree. That's a real degree. Just because I didn't take it and dedicate 4 years to one of those institutions doesn't mean that my lesson learning wasn't any more valid than that student who did.
Yeah. Okay, I just want to say thank you all for your time. I know that this is an exciting area, and we look forward to our students becoming some key stakeholders in the future at Rasmussen. So we thank you for your time in this and also for the work that you're doing to advance the virtual world technologies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks again. Okay, thanks again, everybody. I really appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Quite interesting.
Thank you. This was
that was great.
Once I got my bandwidth issues resolved.
Yeah, we should do this once a month, guys, really.